This is the Hall Institute of Public Policy, and we're back here on our discussion on autism. When we broke last, I asked you a question about autism and adults. You mothers are extremely articulate in describing the needs of your children, of protecting them, of trying to further their goodwill. But what happens when they become adults and you're not around anymore?
You know, I think this is the biggest concern of any parent, and I know that every day I wake up thinking to myself, what's going to happen to Daniel when I'm not here? Who's going to do the things that I do for him? Who's going to take care of him? And I think everyone is concerned about this, and certainly the world is not prepared for it.
And I think also as a mom, just to say there's a couple of important aspects to bring up, that low functioning to very, very high functioning individuals on the autism spectrum will need help, services, guidance throughout their lifespan. So whether you have a child who is completely nonverbal or a child who is extremely verbal, there are other issues that that very successful child will also need, and there are supports that need to be in place. And that's one of the reasons why it's very important to keep the surveillance going so that you can do futures planning. If you don't know how many kids you have as children, you don't know how to do the planning for them when they become adults. And then one of the other, startling or even surprising statistics, even for me, is that a full 50% of individuals who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum will not gain usable language. So that is a very large portion of the population that really will need an extreme level of service as they grow and into adults and through their lifespan.
And I think one of the hopeful, if you can say anything hopeful about the economy, but one of the hopeful bright lights is the Obama administration's policy on autism spectrum disorders. President Obama and Vice President Biden have made a commitment to support individuals on the autism spectrum. Now, what that's going to mean for adults going forward is going to have to be defined by parents, professionals, advocates. But we truly have a commitment. We saw it in our state with Governor Corzine, but now we're seeing it on a federal level. We're seeing the President of the United States specifically outline his policy for people on the autism spectrum. And I think it is an incredible opportunity for all of us to have our voices heard on what we believe the federal government and the state need to do to make sure that everything that you need, whether you have autism or you're a parent or caregiver, is there for you.
What is the autism spectrum? What is the range? How far does it go?
From very mildly impaired or a child who is diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which typically does not have the language component. In fact, those children can be precocious in language, early speakers. They are sometimes considered the little professors. And then in adolescence, that behavioral and social piece will then begin to become a problem. And that's where that diagnosis happens. So very high functioning, very articulate individuals who have, very good outcomes to individuals who really do not gain usable language, who have severe behaviors, and really will need the most help and support going forward.
I'm sorry. Whether or not they're high functioning or low functioning, all parents want the same thing for their kids, just as you would want for your typical kid. We want them to be able to grow up. We all know that adulthood lasts longer than childhood, so it's important that they're happy in their adult life, that they can work, that they can be functioning in society, and they can do this with the appropriate kind of support.
When I was working on gerontology issues and working with older workers when they were first coming back into the workforce, I saw almost the same public movement, that we realized that people didn't need to retire. They wanted to go back to work. They wanted to live independently. And the government really shifted resources from nursing home type facilities to people living in their own homes, people living with community support. Some people needed more intense services than others. Some people needed jobs, and some wanted to volunteer. We're looking at similar types of planning, that individuals want to live in their own homes. Maybe they're going to need a lot of support. It depends on the individual. Maybe they're going to have jobs. We're going to have a whole opportunity with the baby boomers retiring for job opportunities. We need to really engage and be a catalyst for opportunities for people on the autism spectrum, wherever they fall on the spectrum, to live in the community, to work in the community, and to contribute just like anybody else in our society. We have a fundamental responsibility to do that. fiscally as well as morally.
Can these autistic children who become adults, can any of this be mitigated through medication, through chemical means, or is autism just a permanent state of being? Is there any way of rolling this back?
Certainly, many individuals on the spectrum are on medication. Some have seizures and need seizure-controlled medicine. Certainly, there's a lot of behaviors that are controlled by certain antipsychotics or drugs like Paxil and Prozac are often used to help some of the depression that happens with some of these kids. So certainly drugs does play a part in it. There's not a drug that is custom made for an autistic individual, though. It doesn't exist yet, and because there are so many different kinds of autism, I don't think that drug can really happen. They're so individualized that that management has to be individualized.
And just another important aside, that whenever you go down that road of medication management, that needs to be done in strict concert with your physician, whether that is your pediatrician, your developmental, your neuro, your psychiatrist, really needs to be done in concert, because these are very serious medications.
Right.
There are serious side effects, and you have to always be weighing, the benefit and the cost for ever going down that type of a regime. But
Without
that
a doubt.
said, many of our children do go down that path.
And it's
eventually.
very important that the behavioral component is in place first, because you can do so much with the right behavioral component involved. And then if you still need to introduce the drugs, then you introduce the drugs. It's very important that all work together.
Leslie,
Yes.
Michelle, Madeline, I want to thank you very much for being here
Thank
to
you.
talk really about an issue that's become increasingly important to all of us, the question of autism. You've made us really very, very proud of the opportunities to work with you. So thank you very much. On behalf of the Hall Institute of Public Policy, I'm Michael Rickards saying thank you.